All right, you guys are good. All loss will be at 12:58. Have a good round.
All right, before we get started, I just want to make sure that everyone's on the chat or on the Zoom call who needs to be on the call. Do we have all 6 attorneys, 6 witnesses, 2 timekeepers, whoever will be sharing exhibits and demonstratives from both teams?
Your Honor, we will have our attorneys come in and out of this screen and retitle this box.
Okay. So I assume they're all then physically present.
Yes, Your Honor, all our attorneys are physically present and will be using this camera, and all of our witnesses are physically present and using the other camera.
All right.
Your Honors, the plaintiff will do the same.
Okay, sounds good. And I have my scoring judge here, right?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Awesome. So as you probably know, I'm going to ask that everyone, including our scoring judge, keeps their audio and their video off unless we need to hear from them. We're going to use the speaker view for statements and the gallery view for examinations. Hopefully that's not a surprise to you guys. My name is Liam Simpkins Walker. I'll be presiding over the trial. I think it sounds like everything is ready to go. So with that, the Circuit Court of Midlands is in session, calling the case of Joey Petrillo as administrator of the estate of Genesis Petrillo v. Harper Martini and Peony Estates, case number CV 20-101248. Do we have counsel from both parties?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Are there any pretrial matters we need to address?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff would like to make appearances before the court.
Sure.
Good morning, Your Honors. My name is Colin Kim, and I, along with my co-counsels, Julia Robertson.
Good morning, Your Honor.
And Lauren Sager,
Good morning, Your Honor.
represent the plaintiff, Joey Petrillo, as administrator of the estate of Genesis Petrillo. At this time, Your Honor, the plaintiff requests a motion for constructive sequestration of the witnesses.
Does the defense have any objection to sequestration?
Your Honor, we would just ask that our party representative, Harper Martini, not be constructively sequestered for this, even though she will not be testifying.
All right. And does the plaintiff have any party representative?
No, Your Honor.
In that case, I'll constructively sequester all witnesses with the exception of Ms. Martini.
Thank you, Your Honor. The plaintiff was also wondering how Your Honor would like to go about exhibits and presenting that. Would you like us to share our screen?
Yeah, I don't know what the custom is for you guys. The custom that I've seen before is before exhibits are introduced, you don't want to screen share them because that would be showing the exhibit to the jury. But if you could ask the witness to pull up the exhibit or give them a copy of the exhibit so that the jury doesn't see it. Of course, once the exhibit's in evidence, you could ask to screen share it in order to publish the exhibit, just like if we were in a real courtroom.
Thank you, Your Honor. Then at this time, the plaintiff is ready to proceed.
Anything from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor, we just have a few more pretrial matters. First, we'd like to invoke Rule 603, which says that all witnesses are constructively sworn in before their testimony.
Yeah, all witnesses will be considered pre-sworn.
And Your Honor, we'd ask that all objection arguments be held constructively outside the presence of the jury. And so we'd ask that if there is an objection argument over an exhibit, that would we be able to screen share for the purposes of the evidentiary argument, and it's heard outside the jury.
Would that be all right with the plaintiff?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, we can hear all objection arguments constructively outside the jury's presence. If you need to show me an exhibit in order to deal with evidentiary issues, you can screen share it and consider that tendering it to the bench.
Yes, Your Honor. And for the purposes of a virtual trial, we will be switching out on this camera. So we'd ask to have a minute or two to switch out and change our names on this screen in between examinations.
Yeah, that sounds fair to me.
And
Will
Your
the
Honor,
plaintiff be doing that as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
and additionally, for safety purposes, Your Honor, all of our team members will be leaving this room, and so we will be removing our masks safely while we are performing.
Okay, good to know.
And with that, Your Honor, the defense is ready to proceed. Oh, Your Honor, may we introduce ourselves?
You may do
My
that.
apologies. Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Magna Malka. I'm joined by my co-counsel Magnolia Stewart
Good morning, Your Honor.
and Alec Graven.
Good morning, Your Honor.
We represent the defendant, Harper Martini. And with that, Your Honor, the defense is ready to proceed.
All right, Mr. Kim, do you have an opening statement?
Your Honor, my co-counsel Julia Robertson will be presenting the opening statement.
All right.
Your Honor, may I change my name briefly?
Sure, take a minute.
Permission to proceed?
Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honors, opposing counsel, members of the jury, I stand before you today to tell you of a tragic story, one of an irresponsible father who could not forgive and forget his daughter's homosexuality. Good morning, Your Honors. My name is Julia Robertson. I, along with my co-counsels, Lauren Sager and Colin Kim, represent Joey Petrillo, the administrator of the estate of Genesis Petrillo. As the prosecution, we bear the burden of proving beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, Harper Martini, is guilty of battery against Genesis Petrillo. The prosecution will call its witnesses. First, you will hear from Angel Rodriguez, a member of the wedding party. He will attest to the fact that Harper did not get along with Genesis and constantly sought out Genesis as a target for Harper's verbal and eventual physical abuse. Second, you will hear from Dr. Quan, who will report that the ingestion of pesticides used at Peony Estates is dangerous in any quantity. She will tell you that the symptoms Genesis exhibited perfectly matched that of someone who ingested organophosphate poisoning. Lastly, the prosecution will call Lonnie Paris, who will testify that after personal investigation of the estate, she found further evidence of the tension between Genesis and Harper. The defense will call its witnesses, but none of them will be able to admonish Harper Martini or deny that he did not want Genesis Petrillo out of Casey Soto's life. In the end, Harper Martini was unwilling to stifle his negative emotions toward Genesis and allowed it to push him over the edge. And it's for these reasons that at the end of this trial, my co-counsel, Lauren Sager, will come before you again and ask you to find in favor of the prosecution. Thank you. I'm sorry, Your Honor, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Do we have an opening from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff picked the wrong poison. Members of the jury, the plaintiff just stood up here and told you a story. They told you that Harper Martini intentionally poisoned the wine that Genesis Petrillo drank. But throughout the trial today, it'll become apparent to you that that's not the case, because the plaintiff's story is not more likely than not. The plaintiff will not be able to meet their burden because they focused on the wrong poison in today's case, when the real poison was alcohol. On June 9th, 2019, the friends and families of Genesis Petrillo and Casey Soto gathered to celebrate their wedding. This weekend was supposed to be the beginning of the rest of their lives together. But sadly, the rehearsal dinner ended in tragedy. You see, Genesis and Harper Martini, Casey's father, had an argument. And as a result of this argument, Genesis became stressed. She became worried that she might lose Casey, that she might not be able to marry the love of her life. So Genesis drank and drank and drank. And at the end of the rehearsal dinner, Genesis was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. Genesis Petrillo died. Now, members of the jury, the plaintiff is placing blame where there isn't any because they picked the wrong poison. First, you'll hear about how Genesis and Harper didn't get along. In fact, plaintiff's counsel just got up here and told you exactly that. But while they want you to believe that that conflict led Harper Martini to intentionally poison Genesis, the reality is that the conflict led Genesis to drink heavily that night. In fact, you'll hear from Casey Soto, Genesis's fiance, who will tell you that very fact. She'll tell you how Genesis and Harper got into an argument, and that led Casey to think about calling off the wedding. But even though they continued with the ceremony, Genesis still had a nagging voice in the back of her head, telling her that she might not be able to marry Casey. And so to quiet that voice, Genesis drank champagne, tequila, wine. Casey and Blair Osborne, Casey and Genesis's wedding planner, will tell you exactly this, that Genesis drank steadily throughout the night. And not one witness in today's trial will be able to tell you exactly how much Genesis Petrillo had to drink at the rehearsal dinner. And because of this, you'll hear from Dr. Reed Cannon, an expert toxicologist. Dr. Cannon will explain to you how alcohol poisoning affects the human body. And he'll tell you that there is no way to definitively know what caused Genesis Petrillo's death. Members of the jury, what will become clear to you at the end of trial today is that there is no option presented to you that is more likely than not. The plaintiff in this case will not be able to meet their burden because they picked the wrong poison. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the plaintiff want to call their first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff would like to call Angel Rodriguez to the stand. Mr. Rodriguez, can you hear me okay? Are you having any technical difficulties?
I can hear you perfectly clear.
Permission to proceed, Your Honor?
Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Will you please state your name for the court?
Angel Rodriguez.
And Mr. Rodriguez, what is your occupation?
I'm a kindergarten teacher.
And can you explain why you are here today?
I'm here on behalf of Genesis Death. I was with her when I was up to AMTs with her.
Were you part of the wedding planning in any way?
Yeah, I was with Casey and Genesis. We were planning it at Rosie and Pedro's. They actually originally planned to have it there, but then Harper got in the way and ruined things. But they were supposed to have it there, and we were planning it all out and everything. And so yeah, it was part of the wedding plan, I'd say.
Did you sense any tension as the wedding was being planned?
Tension? That's an understatement. Oh my gosh. There's arguments everywhere. I heard Harper and Casey arguing, Casey and Genesis arguing. Everybody was arguing for each other. It was like, instead of a love triangle, it was a good hate triangle right there.
And can you explain what happened the night of the rehearsal dinner?
Oh yeah, I'm more than gladly to explain that. So, we're chilling and everything, having a good time. Casey gives a lovely speech, wasn't really paying attention, kind of drinking here and there. Genesis speech was beautiful, lovely, didn't insult nobody. Then Harper gets up and gives a speech, and man, calls Genesis a problem child, insults her. I'm like, yo, what are you doing to my girl? That's my girl. That's not my homegirl. You can't do that to her. And he was disrespecting her all over. I was like, wow, that's crazy.
And did you ever see anything directly that involved the tension of Mr. Martini and Genesis?
I wouldn't say I saw anything that directly involved it. I remember there was one night that Casey and Genesis, they were drinking, we were all having a fun time. And Casey got upset and left, and then Genesis got upset. And the next morning, I was like kind of hungover, but Genesis was like, yo, I gotta say I'm sorry to Harper. And I was like, ooh, something happened the night before. Don't know what happened. Big T, though. I was like, wow, that's crazy. But yeah, I would say like there's definitely
Objection to relevance, Your Honor.
Your Honor, if I may. Your Honor, first of all, relevance is a low bar. This is lending to the rationally based perception of the witness and the relation between Mr. Martini and Genesis.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Sure.
Your Honor, this witness's testimony about his opinion about what happened between Genesis and Harper Martini is of no relevance to this trial and does not make any fact in the case more or less likely.
Okay, can you explain to me exactly why it's relevant, Ms. Robertson?
Yes, Your Honor. It's relevant because it lends credence to the fact that Mr. Martini and Genesis did not get along. And in order to prove intent, which is an element of battery, we would need to prove the tension between the two in their relationship.
All right. I think it at least meets the very low bar of relevance. I'll let it in, but you're on a short leash. Don't go too far beyond the bounds of Rule 401.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Rodriguez, can you explain what happened after dinner?
Yeah, so Genesis, she wasn't drinking that much. I found that pretty peculiar. And then Harper comes in and he has this nice wine, the Cara wine. And it was really sweet, honestly, like kind of sweet. He was like, this is gonna be like for Genesis and everything. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then, Genesis got it and she just started drinking that wine everywhere. And she was like, you want some? And I tried it and it was like, yeah, I didn't like the taste. It didn't taste that good to me. But yeah, it was a pretty nice night afterwards and everything, I would say.
So was Genesis drinking steadily throughout the evening?
Oh, no. Me and my girl Genesis usually go shot to shot. We're usually drinking all the time, man. Like, she was a very slow drinker throughout the evening. Very slow until she got that car wine. When she got that car wine, she started drugging that.
And what happened after Miss Petrillo drank the wine?
Well, afterwards, after rehearsal dinner, me and a few guys in Genesis, we went to go to the bar and hang out a little bit. And she ordered shots, but like she was knocked out like almost the whole time. Like she was snoring in the back and everything, crazy. And I was like, well, let me help her up. And so I kind of went over there and I picked her up and I kind of walked her back to the dorm. But there was something weird about it. Her breath didn't smell like alcohol. And I found that pretty peculiar.
Did you see Miss Petrillo drink any of the tequila?
No, she actually did not take a shot. Only a few other guys and us took shots. She did not take a shot.
And then, so you saw Genesis later that evening. What happened after she was passed out?
So after she passed out, I figured, let me help the homegirl up. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be her wedding day tomorrow. So I take her up to the bedroom and everything, and I'm like ready to get her up. And all of a sudden, her skin goes pale and she starts puking everywhere. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do? She's puking. I try to give her some water. She pukes the water out. I'm like, I'm terrified. I'm like, maybe she just had too much to drink. I don't know what's going on. And the last words I hear her say are 911.
And why did you call 911? Can you explain that for us today?
Oh, I called 911. I was worried about my homegirl. Who wouldn't call 911 after seeing like one of their best friends puking everywhere and then pass out on the ground in their vomit? I'm terrified.
And what happened after Genesis went to the hospital?
Well, she entered a coma and I couldn't really hear her. And then around like 8 in the morning, I got the news that she was dead.
What happened when you saw Harper Martini after that?
So I catch a taxi ride back over and I gotta go tell Casey. I'm like, I feel so bad. I got this bad news. His girl just died and everything. And I was like, man. And then, I run into Harper on the way there and Harper's like, oh my gosh, Genesis poison? That's terrible. And I was like, how did you know that? Like, I was kind of confused. I didn't tell him that she was poisoned. So I was like really confused as to how he knew that she was poisoned.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Stewart?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Rodriguez, I'd like to go through the rehearsal dinner with you in detail. On the day of the rehearsal dinner, you told us that you saw Mr. Martini and Genesis fighting, right?
No, I did not say that.
Mr. Rodriguez, on the day of the rehearsal dinner, you saw Harper and Genesis get into an argument, right?
Correct, ma'am.
I'm sorry?
Correct, ma'am.
Yes. And because of that fight, Genesis told you that she was afraid, right?
She did. I remember that. She approached me and she said, "I'm terrified for my life." She said, "Don't get too close to Harper."
And now later that night, you told us that Harper made a toast.
Correct.
And during that toast, Harper gave everybody in the wedding party a bottle of wine, right?
That is correct, ma'am.
And one of those people that Harper gave a bottle of wine to was Genesis.
Yes, however, it was a different bottle of wine that he gave to Genesis. See, everyone got Horizon, but Genesis got Cara.
That's right. Genesis got that bottle of wine, right?
Correct.
Objection asked and answered.
Brief response.
Yes, Your Honor. I was just clarifying whether or not Genesis had gotten a bottle of wine, but I can move on.
I think it's fine. I think you were clarifying. Overruled.
Now, Mr. Rodriguez, you told us on direct examination that Genesis was drinking that wine all night, right?
Correct, ma'am.
And you also saw during Harper's toast that you felt Genesis shaking under the table, right?
That is correct. She was definitely scared of that man for sure.
That's right. And so Genesis took a sip of her champagne, right?
That is correct.
Now, at this point, you'd seen Genesis drink a few glasses of the wine.
When you say the wine, do you mean the Cara wine?
Yes, I mean the bottle of wine.
I believe, ma'am, that is incorrect. I believe she took a sip of champagne and then Harper gave her toast. And then after Harper gave the toast, he got the Cara wine.
Yes, Mr. Rodriguez. So Genesis had a sip of champagne, and then later Genesis had a glass of the Cara wine.
Oh, yes, you did.
Yes. And later that night, you and Genesis went to the bar at the wedding, right?
That is correct, ma'am.
And at the bar, you told us that Genesis ordered a round of tequila shots.
Yes, ma'am.
But you didn't see Genesis take any of those shots.
That is correct, ma'am.
Now, you weren't paying close attention to what Genesis was drinking, though, right?
No, I was talking to my boy Drew, so I really wasn't paying that much attention.
That's right. You were talking to your friend Drew, so you don't know whether or not Genesis had any tequila.
Yeah. I guess you could say I don't really know that answer.
Yeah, you don't know that. And in fact, Mr. Rodriguez, you don't know exactly how many drinks Genesis Petrillo had that night, right?
I don't know how many drinks she had at the bar. I do know how many drinks she had that night. I was paying attention because she was a slow drinker that night. Me and her usually drink so much together. She wasn't drinking that much.
Mr. Rodriguez, is it your testimony that you know exactly how many drinks Genesis Petrillo had the night of the rehearsal dinner?
I don't know exactly how many, but it definitely wasn't her usual amount.
Now, Mr. Rodriguez, I'm not asking you whether this is the usual amount that Genesis was drinking. I'm just asking you whether or not you saw how much Genesis had to drink. You didn't, right?
That's correct. I did not.
And Mr. Rodriguez, at that point, you did not see how much Genesis had to drink because you'd lost count of your own drink consumption, right?
Yeah, I was having a good time.
That's right. You were having a good time. You weren't paying attention, as you told us on direct.
Yes, ma'am.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there any redirect of this witness?
Just briefly, Your Honor.
Sure.
Mr. Rodriguez, I really just have, I believe, one question for you. Just to clarify, did you see Genesis Petrillo drinking heavily and steadily throughout the night?
No, ma'am.
No further questions.
Any recross based on that?
No recross, Your Honor.
Will this witness step down? All right, well, the witness stepped down anyways. Give us just a moment and then you can call your next.
apologize, Your Honor. I believe we had a little bit of a glitch in our system. Thank you for having the witness step down. We will call our second witness.
Okay, give me just a moment, then call your witness to the stand.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, whenever you're ready, I'm ready as well.
Change your name.
Hi, may I change my name real quickly?
Sure.
I don't have my computer on.
All right, Your Honor, the prosecution would like to call Dr. Quan to the stand.
All right.
Hello, please state your name for the court.
My name is Dr. Quan.
All right, Dr. Quan, what is your educational background?
I received my BS in biology with a minor in chemistry at the Georgia Institute of Technology, and then went on to get my medical degree at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I completed my residency at Emory's Department of Emergency Medicine and then a fellowship in medical toxicology under Dr. G.T. Seaver.
Very impressive, Dr. Quan. Have you published any articles in your field?
Yes, I've published several articles in emergency medicine and toxicology. My most recent one is called A Woman's Weapon or an Unfortunate Accident, an analysis of US poisoning cases from 2000 to 2015, which was published in the Journal of American Medical Association in 2016.
What is the nature of your current occupation?
I currently work as a chief emergency physician at River Valley Hospital in Midlands.
And what does your position entail?
My position requires me to quickly and accurately diagnose patients who enter the emergency room so that they can receive the best care possible. I lead a team of doctors and nurses, and however, I am the one in charge of ordering the tests, making diagnoses, and deciding on a course of treatment for each patient.
And Dr. Quan, do you have a specific specialty?
Yes, I specialize in toxicology, and whenever suspected poisoning cases come in, I usually treat those patients.
Your Honors, based upon Dr. Quan's education, experience, and training in the field, I'd ask that she be admitted as an expert in the field of toxicology.
What does the defense have to say about that?
Your Honor, under this jurisdiction, experts don't have to be specially qualified by the court or recognized by the court before they testify. They can just testify to their opinions, and objections can come up if they need be.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. Ms. Sager, are myself and Ms. Melcote wrong about that?
No, Your Honor, I do not believe so.
Okay. In that case, the court won't formally qualify her as an expert witness, but feel free to offer whatever conclusions you think you've laid proper foundation to. And Ms. Melcote, if you want to object to those conclusions at the time they're raised, if you don't believe that there is proper foundation laid.
Of course, Your Honor.
All right. Dr. Quan, when did you first encounter Ms. Petrillo?
Ms. Petrillo was brought into the hospital by her friend Angel Rodriguez, who reported that Petrillo was at a party.
And what were her initial symptoms?
Initially, she presented with nausea, vomiting, and stomach pain, as well as slurred speech, and she had trouble responding when I attempted to speak with her. She also smelled of wine and appeared to be intoxicated.
All right. What was your initial diagnosis based on these?
Based on the emergency room encounter that I had with her, I expected hers to be a case of alcohol poisoning.
And at what point did you suspect that you were wrong?
after I completed my full examination.
All right. What stood out to you
Objection,
in that
Your Honor?
examination?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. What was the objection?
Assuming facts not in evidence, to the question, at what point did you think you were wrong? I apologize. I think it took a second to unmute my mic.
Okay, do you have a response?
Yes. That the witness is able to testify based upon sufficient knowledge from her position and her experience with Ms. Petrillo.
May I be heard, Your Honor?
Sure.
Your Honor, my objection was to the question. The question was, at what point did you suspect you might be wrong? The witness never established that she thought she might be wrong at any point, so the question assumed that fact.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think this is a bit of a form issue, but I think you can probably easily rephrase the question to get around that. So I'll overrule or sustain the objection and ask you to rephrase the question if you want.
All right. Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Quan, did there come a point where you suspected that your initial diagnosis was incorrect?
Yes, after I completed the full examination.
All right. And what stood out to you during this examination?
3 things. First being that her pupils were severely contracted, whereas alcohol poisoning usually causes dilated pupils. She was also tearing excessively.
And what was the second thing?
Second, she exhibited involuntary muscle twitching and incontinence, which are not symptoms of alcohol poisoning.
And the final?
Finally, Petrillo's pulse was slowed rather than rapid.
Okay, what did you begin to suspect was the actual cause of Ms. Petrillo's symptoms?
I began to expect organophosphate, which is a poison that is commonly used as an insecticide, and I believe that was the cause of Petrillo's symptoms.
Okay, did you order any additional tests?
Yes, I ordered a poisons and toxins analysis in addition to a toxicology report.
And why did you believe organophosphate to be the poison involved?
Organophosphates are the only pesticides commonly used in midlands, and they cause pupils to contract as well.
Is this poison detectable in the bloodstream?
No, it is not detectable in the bloodstream, primarily because it goes through rapid hydrolysis in the liver, and there is no simple blood test to determine the levels of organophosphates a patient has absorbed.
Based upon this, what do laboratory analysts look for instead?
Instead, they look for indicators of low acetylcholinesterase, which is a telltale sign of exposure, and it is so closely correlated with organophosphate pesticide exposure that doctors can use it to conclusively diagnose organophosphate poisoning.
Okay, how much organophosphate would one have to come into contact with for it to be potentially deadly?
While it's not currently possible to determine the exact amount of organophosphate which has been ingested, any suspected ingestion of the poison is potentially deadly, and there have been cases of people hospitalized and even killed in simply ingesting only the amount remaining on food after spraying and cooking.
All right, in what ways can one be poisoned by organophosphate?
There are 3 ways, first being absorption through the skin, and then inhalation, as well as oral ingestion.
How do you suspect Ms. Petrillo was poisoned by organophosphate?
Ms. Petrillo ingested the poison.
And why do you believe this?
Objection, Your Honor. To lack of foundation.
Okay. You want to explain?
Yes, Your Honor. The witness just stated that Ms. Petrillo ingested the poison. That's not a conclusion that she came through any kind of medical diagnosis or treatment that she has described yet. This is simply discussing exactly how Ms. Petrillo might have, how the poison might have entered her system. She hasn't given any kind of explanation as to how she knows this happened. And no explanation about whether or not she saw Ms. Petrillo ingest the poison or how she could know that.
Do you want to respond?
Yes, Your Honor. In the very next question that I will ask this witness, she will explain exactly how she arrived at this conclusion.
Your Honor, that's fine. I would just ask the foundation be laid before the opinion is given.
Okay, here's what I'll do. I will overrule the objection and conditionally admit this piece of testimony subject to the foundation being laid in the next question. If
Yes,
it's not, re-raise your objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Dr. Quan, why do you believe this to be the case?
She did not report any skin contact, and there was no outward evidence of such contact. And the order and time frame in which her symptoms appeared was also inconsistent with either absorption or inhalation.
What is the natural progression of an organophosphate poisoning by ingestion?
Upon ingestion, a person will begin to experience digestive symptoms, including nausea and vomiting. And next, the nervous system is affected, and other symptoms such as excessive sweating, difficulty walking, slowed breathing, contracted pupils, as well as excessive tearing will begin to appear. In severe cases, one can experience muscle spasms and incontinence, seizures, and respiratory constriction, and these final symptoms often lead to death if not treated in time.
Did you administer an antidote?
Yes, I did.
And what happened next?
I asked the lab to run an acetylcholinesterase test and told them to prioritize that test and an organophosphate test.
What did you note as Petrio's preliminary cause of death?
Respiratory failure due to pesticide poisoning. She experienced a coughing fit and a seizure and then fell into a coma from which she never woke up.
What reason did you have to believe that organophosphate poisoning led to Petrio's death prior to receiving your test results?
The progression of Petrio's symptoms perfectly matched the expected progression of a pesticide poisoning case. There was digestive symptoms followed by sweating, contracted pupils, and a slowed heartbeat, and finally nervous system symptoms such as involuntary muscle movement, seizures, and unconsciousness leading to death.
And what were the results of the tests when they did arrive?
The test revealed extremely low acetylcholinesterase levels, and an organophosphate pesticide was present in Petrio's blood. The results from test.
Objection, Your Honor. Best evidence.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yes, Your Honor. The witness is referring to a toxicology report that we actually have available to enter. Under Rule 1002, the witness is supposed to testify to the best form of that evidence, which would be entering that report.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to enter into evidence the exhibit number. Sorry.
You want to enter it into evidence?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. If we're going to do that, I'll sustain the objection and we can go with it once it's in evidence.
All right.
It's not entered yet, right, Your Honor?
Right. My understanding is that it's not in evidence, but if they want to try to admit it into evidence, they can.
Of course, Your Honor.
Actually, Your Honor, we will not be entering this into evidence at this time, and we can just strike this question and move on to the next.
Okay. What does the defense have to say about that? Is that all right?
Your Honor, can they strike the testimony as well? All testimony about the lab report discussing the contents of that report?
What do you say about that, Ms. Sager?
No, I do not believe that that is necessary because there was only one question with regard to this specific report.
Okay, so first of all, we don't strike questions, but if there was any testimony that elicited specific contents from the report, I will strike that from the record under 1002.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. And one final question, Dr. Quan. What is your expert conclusion?
I can say to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty that Genesis Petrio ingested wine contaminated with an organophosphate in the evening of June 7th, 2019, and that this pesticide is what ultimately caused her death.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there a cross of Dr. Quan?
Yes, there is, Your Honor. And one moment while we get our demonstrators up as well. The chart.
Do we have to ask permission to share?
Yes, but I will. My apologies, Your Honor, we're unsharing that. We just want to.
Yes, it's there.
Okay.
It's-
All right, Doctor, now you're on the board of a company called Organic Solutions.
Yes, that is correct.
And that's an organization that advocates against the use of chemical pesticides, right?
Correct.
In fact, you think pesticides are a scourge to the environment.
Yes, I do believe so.
You think they're a danger to humans.
Yes.
And you think that this case in particular demonstrates that.
Yes, however, that's not why I'm here today.
Well, ma'am, actually, you're hoping that this case will help convince legislators to curtail their use of chemical pesticides, right?
I guess you could say that.
So that's a yes to my question.
Objection, relevance?
What's the
Your Honor,
relevance?
Your Honor, I'm asking this witness directly about her bias in this case. She's using this case in order to convince legislators to curtail the use of chemical pesticides, so it's in her interest to say a pesticide killed Genesis.
Yeah, do you have any response to that?
Yes, Your Honor. The opposing counsel is testifying for the witness and is attempting to lead her to make a conclusion that would not be relevant to her testimony.
Okay, what do you say about that?
Your Honor, my line of questioning goes to bias, and bias is always relevant, especially of an expert. And Your Honor, as for me leading the witness, it is cross-examination.
Yeah, so I agree that bias is always relevant. I think this goes to bias. I would hope that she would lead the witness on cross. If the witness thinks that this is an unfair conclusion she's asking, I think, Dr. Quan, you can say so. Overruled.
So, ma'am, I'll ask my question again. You're hoping that this case will lead legislators to curtail their use of chemical pesticides.
Yes.
Well, I want to talk about something you said on direct examination. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I wrote it down. Doctor, did you tell the members of the jury that incontinence is not a symptom of alcohol poisoning?
Yes.
You're familiar with the alcohol impairment chart?
Yes.
You'd recognize it if I were to show it to you?
But possibly.
Well, Your Honor, as the witness is not in the same room as us, can we have a screen share the exhibit outside the presence of the jury for the purposes of entering it?
I think that's fair.
Now, you're familiar with this document,
Yes.
and it's a fair and accurate copy of the alcohol impairment chart.
Yes.
Your Honor, we offer this exhibit into evidence.
Any objections?
No, Your Honor.
And what number is this?
This is exhibit 23, I believe.
All right, exhibit 23 will be omitted without objection.
Now, doctor, you just told us incontinence is not a symptom of alcohol poisoning. I'd like you to read silently as I read aloud. Could you go to the 5th column?
Yes.
And then the 6th point.
Yes.
Under severe impairment, it says incontinence of urine and feces. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
You can unshare that screen. Well, now I want to talk a little bit about her blood alcohol content. Now, you're aware that Genesis's blood alcohol content was measured, right?
Correct.
It was measured at 0.16, right?
Yes.
And you're aware of what time it was measured at, right? What time her blood was drawn?
Yes.
Her blood was drawn at 3 a.m.
Yes.
So that blood alcohol content, 0.16, represented her blood at 3 a.m.
Yes.
She came to the hospital several hours earlier, right?
Correct.
So that number, 0.16, that represents her BAC hours after she stopped drinking. Is that correct?
Correct.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Any redirect for Dr. Quan?
Yes, Your Honor. Briefly, Dr. Quan, when Ms. Petrillo fell into a coma, Is it correct that her blood alcohol content was close to 0.16%?
Yes,
Your Honor, I'd object to the leading.
Yeah, can you just rephrase your question a little bit?
Sure. Dr. Quan, around what percentage was Ms. Petrio's blood alcohol content close to the time that she died?
0.16%.
So, Dr. Quan, is it relevant that her blood alcohol content was at this point when she died?
Yes.
And does it matter that it was lower than it could have been earlier?
No, I wouldn't say that.
All right, no further questions, Your Honor.
Any recross?
Nothing for me, Your Honor.
All right, can Dr. Quan step down?
We'll switch out. Just one moment.
We'll let Dr. Quan step down and give me just a minute to finish writing something. Then you can call your next witness.
Your Honor, I asked that I can change my name while you guys are still writing things.
Yeah, go ahead and feel free to change your name without asking whenever you need to.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, I'm ready for you to call your next witness whenever you want.
Thank you, Your Honor. The plaintiff would like to call Lonnie Paris to the stand. Are you ready, Your Honor?
Whenever you are.
Thank you. Can you please state your name for the court?
My name is my name is Lonnie Paris.
Good morning, Ms. Paris.
Good morning.
Can you tell the court what you do for a living?
So I am an investigative journalist by trade, but I'm an environmentalist by heart. And my job is to expose America's dark secrets, especially the ones that are affecting the environment.
And how did you first hear about Peony Estates?
I first was tipped off at the time that I worked for Blitz News Network back in 2016. I had a tip that said that there was a health code violation concern and it referred to pesticides, and I had to go investigate.
So then when was your first time that you visited Peony Estates?
It was about 2 years after I got the tip, around July of 2018. I was working freelance at the time because I was let go by Blitz News Network, but it was strictly because of budgetary reasons, not because of my investigative journalist work.
And what did you find there?
I examined the public areas of the winery. I didn't really find anything out of the ordinary, but I did see that the estate had guided tours of private facilities, so I knew that I had to go. And I figured that my best way to uncover any lies of Peony Estates was to take those private tours.
And did you ever end up taking any of these guided tours?
I did. I went in one of my many disguises. It was great. I love my disguises. I wore this hat. I think it really, really makes me look like I'm just a normal person blending in. And I had a great time. The tour was so informative. I learned about the winemaking processes. I saw the employees only sign also while I was on the tour. So I kind of hung back a little bit and I decided to sneak in there so I could get some more information.
And what did you find in the employees only section?
I found the winery's bottling area.
What did you find in the bottling area?
I found some discarded canisters of pesticides with the label bug off, and they were scattered in the back rooms, but they appeared to be new and unsealed.
How many more times did you return to Peony Estates?
I went once again on May 6th of 2019. There was a surprise inspector there. And then I also went 2 days later on May 8th during the time of the surprise inspection for the health codes. And I also went a third time on May 30th of 2019. And the last time I visited was on the day of the rehearsal dinner, which was June 7th.
What did you learn on your third trip, the one that you took on May 30th?
I learned that Casey was getting married at Peony Estates later that year. I used the wedding prep as a cover, and I became an assistant photographer, which was super fun because it was easy access to all the winery. And while I looked around the employee section again, I did see Harper Martini with someone else by the storage shed. I specifically remember seeing Harper hand that person an envelope, but I could not tell you who that person was.
Were there any characteristics that showed who that person was or who it could be?
There were some characteristics, yeah. The person had the same height and build as Genesis Petrillo, but I did not see the face, so I cannot confirm nor deny that it was in fact Genesis Petrillo.
And what was your last visit to Peony Estate like?
My last visit was great. I was a caterer for the wedding, and it was so fun because I was able to just go in there and really blend in with everyone. But it was rather disturbing because I did see an exchange between Harper and Genesis with the bottle of wine, which really prompted me to believe that Genesis and Harper, they were making some type of peace offering or something had happened.
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
Would you like to be heard?
Yes, Your Honor. This witness is testifying to the mindsets of Harper Martini and Genesis Petrillo, which is precluded under Rule 701.
Response?
Your Honor, this is just Ms. Paris's rationally based perception of what went down when she experienced the exchange. She can't testify as to whether or not what their mental state of mind was, but just that this was her rationally based perception.
We don't have a court reporter here, so can one of you remind me exactly what the testimony was, the way the witness phrased it?
Yes, Your Honor. The witness said that Harper Martini was offering a peace offering to Genesis Petrillo. That's specifically what I'm objecting to, because a peace offering requires intent, requires going inside the mind of Harper Martini, which this witness is unable to do.
Okay. Do you want a response to that?
Yes, Your Honor. According to Rule 701, this is, again, her rationally based perception of what went down, and that was her perception that Mr. Petrillo was given a peace offering.
Yeah, I think the term peace offering arguably could go into that person's mindset. It could be a simple descriptor. It's a little bit ambiguous. I'm going to overrule the objection, but please limit her testimony to describing what she observed and not to any conclusions about someone's mindset.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Paris, going back to my question, did you sneak around at all that day? I believe it was the 30th.
I did, but I didn't go anywhere that I hadn't been before.
And what did you see this time?
This time I went back to the bottling area and I found a single bottle of 2019 Cara wine sitting all by itself. And now that I think about it, I am certain that it was the same bottle of wine that I observed on May 8th when I went back to the bottling area. It seemed kind of odd to me.
And did you witness anything else while you were there?
I didn't witness anything, but I heard shouting, and I thought I was gonna go visit the wine closer, but I thought that the shouting took precedent over the bottle of wine.
And who was shouting, Miss Paris?
I definitely heard Harper Martini's voice, and I knew it was his voice because I had heard his voice before on the guided tours, and the other voice was unidentifiable at the time.
And then what happened after that?
After that, I got closer to hear who was shouting. And I got to the point where I could see them, but the person that was arguing with Harper had left by that point. And I noticed a crumpled envelope on the floor. So I opened up that envelope. I took a picture. The note was inside. And then I heard someone coming back. So I put the envelope back on the ground where it had been, and I went and I hid.
Would you recognize a copy of the note that if I showed it to you?
Yes, I would.
And Ms. Paris, can you pull up Exhibit 24 on your computer by chance?
I cannot because this is not my computer, but I can pull it up on the one that I have next to me.
That'd be great. Your Honor, can I pause the clock just while she's pulling up the exhibit?
Sure, we can pause it just for a few seconds. Hopefully it won't take too long.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, I have it. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Ms. Paris, can we restart the clock then? Ms. Paris, what is this?
This is a handwritten note.
And is this a fair and accurate copy of the note?
Yes.
Has it been altered in any way?
No, it has not.
Your Honor, at this time, the plaintiff would like to enter Exhibit 24 into evidence.
Are there any objections?
Yes, Your Honor, to hearsay.
Okay. First of all, can someone screen share a copy of this with me constructively outside the jury's presence so I can see it?
Yes, Your Honor. May I pause my time again while I pull up the exhibit?
Sure, I think your time should be paused already because we're arguing an objection, but if it's not, pause it.
Your Honor, we have Exhibit 24. We can screen share.
I think I see it. Okay, would you like to respond to the hearsay objection?
Yes, Your Honor. This is a party opponent, Your Honor, and so it is admissible in court.
This was written by Ms. Martini?
Yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor, may I respond to that?
Sure.
This was not written by Harper Martini. Specifically, the defense is contesting that it was. We've heard no foundation from this witness at all. The author of this letter, this witness did not see anyone write it. She does not know the authorship and has not testified to it. And so at this time, without any more foundation, that this is a letter written by the opposing party has not been established.
Want to respond to that?
No, Your Honor, we can move on from this and we do not have to enter it into evidence.
Okay, if the parties are in agreement, it won't be accepted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, opposing counsel, for screen sharing that. Ms. Paris, did you notice anything else while you were investigating at that time?
On the day that I found the note?
Yes.
I didn't. No, not on that day.
Okay. And did you see anything else that happened that night, or did you witness anything?
Well, I guess I saw one more thing on that day. The same canister that I saw earlier with the bug off label, it looked to be the same and it had the label ripped off of it. So there was no label on the canister, but it looked exactly like the one I saw next to the bottling station.
And did anything else happen that night at the rehearsal wedding?
At the rehearsal dinner, Genesis, she was drinking, yes, and she was very disoriented on the dance floor, which I thought was a little off because I knew she had been drinking before, but she seemed not really drunk, but more disoriented and not really knowing what was going on.
Objection, Your Honor. Improper opinion. This witness cannot testify to the specific physiological characteristics of the witness. It's beyond her scope of expertise as a lay witness.
The objections to her characterization that she seems sort of drunk or disoriented.
Specifically, this witness did not say that she appeared drunk or disoriented. She said that it seemed to be something different beyond drunk or disorientation, but has not laid any foundation as to, and she has no medical expertise in this field. So the witness at this time can't make a characterization of Genesis Petrillo other than her rationally based perceptions of what she saw.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Sure.
According to Rule 701C, it's not based on scientific or technical or other specialized knowledge within the scope of 702. Ms. Paris has a rationally based perception of how drunk people act and how they conduct themselves, and this was not a normal way that a sober person would act, nor a drunk person would act.
Do you have a response?
Yes, Your Honor. Foundation has not been laid to this. The witness just offered this characterization, but didn't lay any foundation based on her rationally based perceptions of her being able to establish this.
Your Honor, may I respond to that?
Sure. Let's keep it brief.
Ms. Paris just said that she saw her dancing on the dance floor and thought it was weird.
Okay. I tend to agree that there probably hasn't been quite enough foundation laid. Mr. Kim, could you lay a little bit more foundation about perhaps specific things that she observed that could lead her to the conclusion that she didn't look drunk?
Yes, Your Honor, I can.
Your Honor, may we strike that testimony until the foundation's been laid?
Yeah, we'll strike the testimony pending foundation.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Paris, did you observe Ms. Petrillo dancing that night?
I did, yes.
And did anything seem off about it?
She just seemed disoriented. I mean, nothing off more than that.
All right. Were you able to talk to Genesis that night?
I was not, no. I was planning on it, but I didn't get a chance. I thought I would just talk to her the next day at the wedding.
And were you able to?
No, I wasn't.
And why not?
Well, the next day at the wedding, I got there around 8:30 and I found out that Genesis was not there. And then I went to the hospital and I found out that she had passed.
Did you do any other research while you were after that?
At the hospital, I was able to obtain a copy of the death certificate showing how she had passed.
One last question, Ms. Paris. When you were doing further investigation, did anything happen with the car wine to your knowledge?
It did. After I was investigating, I did learn that every single bottle of car wine that was made in 2019 that was planned
Objection, Your Honor. As to hearsay?
Could you explain?
Yes, Your Honor. This witness testified that she learned from a source facts about the car wine and is testifying to these out-of-court statements. If she didn't learn this testimony from an outside source, then this witness doesn't have the personal knowledge to testify.
Okay. Do you have a response?
Your Honor, may I refer with my co-counsels just for a brief second?
Sure.
Your Honor, my response is that there is no statement that's being offered for the truth of the matter asserted and therefore does not qualify under hearsay.
Okay. I heard her say that she learned X, Y, and Z that she was about to explain. Where did she learn that? Or how did she learn that?
She was doing her own individual research outside of any other testimony.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. What this witness is learning from other research is out-of-court statements that she is now offering in court here today for the truth of the matter asserted. So this witness is not able to bring in out-of-court hearsay statements, and she's also not laid the foundation that she has personal knowledge of that. As opposing counsel mentioned, she's getting it from another source, the definition of hearsay.
Yeah, I think the key question is how exactly she learned that. Mr. Kim, did she learn this from talking to a source or a witness or reading a document, or did she learn this because she personally observed this?
Your Honor, for the sake of time, I can we can strike that from the record and move on.
Okay, in that case, the objection will be sustained and we can strike that testimony.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Paris, I have no further questions.
You have a cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Paris, you're an investigative reporter, right?
That's correct, yes.
Now, in your words, you said on the stand that you were trying to expose dark corporate secrets, right, in your investigative work?
Yes, that's true.
Secrets relating to the environment, you thought.
Yes, specifically.
Now, you were let go from your position, isn't that right?
Yes, but only due to budgetary reasons that had nothing to do with my work.
And you were looking for work?
Yeah, I wouldn't really say work. Looking, I guess work just kind of came to me.
But you didn't have a job and you were searching for a job.
Your Honor, asked and answered.
I'll give you a little leeway. Overruled.
Ms. Paris, you didn't have a job and you were looking for a job.
I guess not really looking for a job, but I mean, I had stuff coming in that I could potentially be investigating. It was pretty much by choice.
Well, you received a temporary job offer as an investigative reporter, right?
Yes.
But this job offer, in order to become a full-time offer, is conditional on you drawing enough interest to your stories.
Yes, but it was not until after I had investigated this story that I was offered that job.
Now, Ms. Paris, let's go into a little bit more detail about how you drew interest into this story. You mentioned that you went into Peony Estates and broke into the restricted section, right?
I did.
You went multiple times into that restricted section.
I did.
You wore disguises.
I did. That is correct.
You attended the same guided tour multiple times.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned on direct examination that you saw Harper and Genesis exchange an envelope, right?
That is correct.
You don't know what's in that envelope?
Right. That is correct.
Now, you also mentioned near the wine bottling area, you said you heard Harper Martini in an argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you don't know what they were arguing about.
That is correct.
And you have no idea what caused the disagreement.
That is correct.
Now, I also want to talk about your relationship with Harper Martini. You've spoken with her before, right?
Not directly, no.
But you observed her, right?
Yes.
Now, in your observations, you never once heard Harper Martini ever say anything homophobic, right?
That is correct.
And you never saw her do anything that you perceived to be homophobic.
That is correct.
Now, Ms. Paris, I want to talk a little bit about the night of the rehearsal dinner. You were there, right?
Yes.
And you saw Genesis Petrillo be presented with a bottle of wine.
Yes.
Now, you did not see Genesis Petrillo die, right?
No, I did not.
You don't have personal knowledge of what exactly caused her death.
Well, I do because I was able to obtain a copy of the death certificate.
But Ms. Paris, you don't know what caused her to die. You have the death certificate, but you don't know what caused her to die.
I mean, it's written on the certificate, the pesticide poisoning, but I guess aside from that, then no.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit more, because you never once saw Harper Martini put any pesticides in any wine, right?
That's correct.
You never saw Harper Martini handle any pesticides ever, right?
No, I did not.
You never saw Harper Martini put any pesticides in food.
That is correct.
Now, an important thing I want to talk about is your knowledge of Genesis Petrillo's alcohol consumption, right? Because you saw her consume alcohol?
Yes, I did.
You saw her be presented with a bottle of wine, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And later on the night of the rehearsal dinner, you saw Genesis Petrillo be very disoriented on the dance floor, right?
That is correct.
Now, Ms. Paris, in all your investigation, you weren't ever able to determine how much Genesis Petrillo, how much alcohol Genesis Petrillo drank the night of her death, right?
I was not, no.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor. I just asked that the witness be able to step down.
Sure. Ms. Paris, you can step down.
Your Honor, the plaintiff rests his case.
All right. Do we want a brief recess?
Yes, Your Honor, if time allows.
Okay, we have, looks like an hour and 20 minutes until the all loss time. So I think that should be enough time for a 5-minute break if you want one.
Thank you, Your Honor. That'd be great. Opposing counsel?
Thank you, Your Honor. That works great.
Okay, be back at 11:44.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, do we have everyone back from the break?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense is ready to proceed. We just ask for 1 moment to test our witness microphone before we begin.
Sure. And can I also make sure our jury member is here as well?
Yes, sir. Jury's here.
Awesome.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay, thank you.
And with that, Your Honor, the defense calls Casey Soto to the stand. May I proceed?
Whenever you're ready.
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Hi, my name is Casey Soto.
Why are you here today, Miss Soto?
I'm here because my fiance, Genesis Petrillo, died the morning of our wedding.
Now, Miss Soto, I've got to ask, throughout today's trial today, we've heard that your father does not approve of your sexuality. Did your father ever express any issues to you about your sexuality?
Excuse me?
Did your father ever express any issues to you about your sexuality?
No, my dad's been my biggest supporter. I came out when I was 12. I've had multiple girlfriends, and my dad's been nothing but supportive. He's only had a few issues with Genesis, but that had nothing to do with my sexuality.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay. The witness is testifying outside of the scope of her affidavit.
Your Honor, no outside statements have been elicited at this point. Ms. Soto is just testifying to her knowledge about her and her father's interactions concerning her sexuality, but no statement has been elicited.
Yeah. Mr. Kim, what are the specific statements you're objecting to?
That she came out when she was 12. It's not listed in her statement that she did so.
Your Honor, that's an issue for cross. It's not a hearsay statement.
Yeah, I agree that whether or not this was included in her sworn affidavit is something you can cross on. Are you contending that her coming out itself is a hearsay statement in some way?
Yes, Your Honor, but I can wait until cross-examination to further that.
Okay, are you withdrawing the objection then?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, that case will go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Soto, I want to talk about your relationship with Genesis. How did the two of you meet?
See, I had actually heard about Genesis before I met her, that she was the life of the party and that I just had to meet her. And to be honest, I didn't believe everyone. That is until I saw her. She had this way of making you feel like you were just the most important person in the room. And from the moment I started talking with her, I just knew I never wanted to stop.
What was your relationship with Genesis like?
She was always so sweet and loving and always just knew how to make me laugh. You know, the thing is, sometimes I wish that she turned on that same charm for my dad too.
Now, I want to talk about your relationship with your father. What was it like growing up with your dad?
Well, my mom died when I was really young, so it was just me and my dad growing up, which meant that it was dad and I playing Pretty Princess together. I will say that he did look rather good with the earrings and necklace and crown, if he won, which was few and far times between. But I saw how hard he worked to found Peony Estates. He named it after my favorite flower. And, you know, he was the most important man in my life for so long. And that's why I knew that I really wanted him to get along with Genesis, the love of my life.
Now, did your fiance and Harper get along?
To be honest, they really didn't.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when Genesis proposed, we were talking about hosting the wedding at Rosie and Pedro, another winery in the area. But my dad really wanted us to have it at Peony Estates and even offered to help pay for the wedding if we held it there. And I really couldn't turn down that offer, but Genesis wasn't too happy about that.
Did you end up having the wedding at Peony Estates?
Yeah, we had everything from the tasting to the rehearsal dinner there.
I want to talk about the rehearsal dinner.
Yeah.
How did it begin?
Well, it didn't begin too well. Genesis showed up late, which she usually does, but my dad really likes to run on a schedule, so they started yelling at each other in front of our entire wedding party.
Now, what was your reaction when Genesis and your dad started yelling at each other?
It was the day before my wedding, and I was really considering calling it off or even just postponing it. And I talked to Genesis about this, and she immediately was apologetic and explained to me the tensions between her and my dad, but that ultimately she loved me, and it didn't matter when or where we got married, just that she wanted to spend the rest of her life with me. And gosh, I wanted more than anything to live out my life with her.
Now, what happened after you decided to continue on with the wedding?
Well, I then talked to our wedding planner, Blair Osborne, about keeping my dad and Genesis as far away from each other as possible. I mean, is it really too much to ask to have a wedding drama-free? And then Genesis kept making these little comments about calling off the wedding, and I was reassuring her, but as much as she loves to joke around about weighty things, I could really tell that this got under her skin. But then my dad offered a peace offering to her.
What was that peace offering?
It was the first bottle of wine in his new collection. He doesn't give that bottle away. He always saves it for him and my mom's wedding anniversary.
What was the name of that wine?
Cara. That was my mom's name.
Now, Miss Soto, did you see your fiance drinking at all at the rehearsal dinner?
Yeah, I mean, Genesis had a glass of champagne and also two glasses of wine for herself. She was steadily drinking, and when I went to retire for the night, I think she was rounding up people to play another drinking game. I just hoped that she wouldn't be too hungover for the ceremony the next morning.
Now, you said that you went to bed. What happened when you woke up the next morning?
Well, I woke up at 7 and I got my hair done and my makeup done, and I was getting into my dress, and then my dad came in to visit me.
What was that meeting with your dad like?
It was really special. When he saw me, he started tearing up, and I warned that if he started tearing up, then I would tear up, and I didn't want to have to redo my makeup. So once we had enough tissues for the both of us, he asked me if I was nervous or if I had heard from my wife-to-be yet.
Had you heard from your wife-to-be?
No, I hadn't heard from Genesis yet, and I told Dad that, and he made some comment about postponing the wedding, but I knew that Genesis wouldn't be late for the start of our new lives together.
Miss Soto, did you and Genesis get to start your new life together?
No, we didn't. Angel, Genesis' groomsman, came into my suite soon after and mentioned something about Genesis in a coma. I can't remember exactly. All I knew is that my world just stopped.
When you thought that Genesis might be in a coma, what did you do?
I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. I didn't even have time to get out of my wedding dress. I just knew I needed to see Genesis.
Did you get to Genesis?
No. When I got to the hospital, it was too late. I'm sorry. If I had only been there 5 minutes sooner, then I could have said goodbye.
Thank you. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Kim,
Your Honor, may I proceed?
you may.
Ms. Soto, thank you for coming today. If at all you need to take a break or if you need to please take your time.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course. Harper raised you by himself, correct?
Yeah, it was just me and my dad growing up. My mom died when I was really little.
And Harper and Genesis had problems since the very first time they met.
Yeah, Genesis made a comment about how his wine tasted cheap, and my dad is one for the dramatics. So it kind of just set the tone for their relationship.
Would you say that you needed Genesis in your life?
Genesis was the love of my life. Of course I did. I wanted to wake up every morning with Genesis in my arms and go to bed with her every night too.
And Genesis was always supportive of everything that you did, correct?
Yeah, and so was my dad.
And you were happy when Genesis proposed to you.
It was the happiest day of my life.
When you brought up the engagement with your father, it only made things worse with Harper and Genesis, correct?
Yeah, Genesis wasn't very traditional, so she didn't ask my dad for permission to marry me yet. So my dad was a little peeved and thought it was disrespectful, but I mean, he was always supportive of me, but it just made the tension between him and my fiance worse.
So that's a yes to my question.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Would you say that Harper loved you?
Oh my gosh, Harper, my dad loved me more than anything and was always supportive of everything I tried, from, plays to soccer. I mean, he was my biggest supporter.
And Harper and Genesis snapped at each other a couple times, correct?
Yeah, they weren't the best of friends.
It got to the point where you actually considered canceling your wedding because of it.
Yeah, and that, I did. I mean, I felt bad for telling Genesis because she was so stressed about it afterwards too.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor. I just ask that the witness be allowed to step down and the attorneys be allowed to switch roles.
Sure. Ms. Soto, you can step down. Feel free to switch your attorneys around. Give me just a moment and then you can call your next one.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Whenever you're ready to call your witness, go ahead.
Your Honor, the defense calls Blair Osborne to the stand. Please introduce yourself to the court. Ms. Osborne, I think you're muted.
My apologies, Your Honor.
May you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Blair Osborne.
What do you do for a living, Ms. Osborne?
Well, I'm the CEO, CFO, administrative assistant, and head IT specialist for my company, Bliss by Blair.
What is Bliss by Blair?
It's my company where I make dreams come true on the biggest day of any couple's lives. I'm a wedding planner. I mean, destination weddings, traditional weddings, you name it. Whatever my clients want, they get.
How did you become involved in wedding planning?
It's a funny story, actually. See, I was a bridesmaid in so many weddings for my friends, and I've seen it all. I've seen the caterers burning the food, the groomsmen forgetting their socks. I mean, my friends just asked me to handle so many logistics and hiccups that I figured I might as well get paid for it.
Do you know a person named Harper Martini?
I do, yeah. Harper Martini owns Peony Estates. It's the picture perfect wedding spot. I mean, the ambiance, the wine, 10 out of 10. I've hosted over 80 events at Peony Estates. Harper even asked me to help plan her daughter Casey's wedding, and it was a real honor.
Now, Ms. Osborne, in this time of working with Mr. Martini over 80 events, did you ever experience any issues of homophobia with Mr. Martini?
No, never. I mean, some of the weddings I hosted at Peony Estates were gay weddings, and they were really fun. Harper always got into the decorations and ensuring that the clients just had the best experience to the start of their lives together.
Now, Ms. Osborne, I want to turn to the wedding of Casey Soto. Did that wedding go off as successfully as all your other events?
No. I mean, it was the worst day of my career. Casey's fiance, Genesis, passed away and the whole wedding was canceled. I mean, it was heartbreaking.
I want to take a step back. When you're planning the wedding, were there any issues?
Well, in the wedding planning industry, there are always issues. I mean, half my job is consoling stressed bridezillas and wrangling drunk family members, but this family was particularly uncooperative.
Now, when you were leading up into the wedding, did you have any specific issues with Harper and Genesis?
Well, there was this one meeting and Harper pulled out her phone and started playing this voicemail that Genesis left her, and it really wasn't great.
I want to talk about the night of the wedding. The night of the rehearsal dinner. Did you see Genesis Petrillo consume any alcohol that night?
Yeah, Genesis was definitely drinking. I was a little worried because you never want a drunk bride on the day, a hungover bride on the day of the wedding, but I didn't want to say anything.
What alcohol did you see Genesis drink that night?
What didn't I see her drink? She had that bottle of wine that she was drinking by herself, and she was also at the bar with her friend a lot of the night drinking.
Do you know how much she drank that night?
No, I don't know how much, but I do know that I was expecting to use my anti-nausea kit the next day. I just told her to drink lots of water and to be safe because I had to head to bed early to get ready for the next day.
Did you end up seeing Genesis Petrillo that next day?
No. I woke up bright and early and I went to go see Harper to talk things over for the wedding.
And what was that interaction with Harper like?
Well, Harper said that she wanted the day to be perfect for Casey, and she seemed pretty excited about the festivities.
Now, Miss Osborne, did the wedding happen between Genesis Petrillo and Casey Soto?
No, it didn't. We went to Genesis's suite, but she was missing, and I mean, I was freaking out. We had a missing bride. And then Genesis's friend told us that she was in the hospital.
Now, you said you left Genesis Petrillo at the bar and told her to drink plenty of water. After that point, did you see Miss Petrillo at all again?
No. I heard Genesis died in the hospital, and it was devastating. I mean, my job is to plan the happiest day of a couple's lives, and this turned out to be one of the worst days of my career.
Thank you, Miss Osborne. I have nothing further.
You. You'd like to cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Osborne, you found planning the wedding of Casey Soto and Genesis Petrillo to be particularly difficult, correct?
Yeah, I did. They definitely didn't like the same color flower arrangements. There was some trepidation over the cake flavor, some stuff there for sure.
And you sensed tension between Mr. Martini and Genesis, correct?
Yes.
You found that crying and fighting were the theme of planning this wedding, correct?
Yeah, and unfortunately, that happens to be the theme of a lot of weddings I plan, contrary to popular belief. I mean, the behind the scenes, you wouldn't believe it. It's insane back there.
And Martini asked you to keep your work on the wedding a secret in the beginning, correct?
In the beginning, when she first asked me to plan Casey's wedding, she asked me to keep it between us, and I was a little uncomfortable, but also like, surprise wedding? How fun. I'd never done one before, so figured I'd give it a try.
All right, well, you also sensed tension between Mr. Martini and Casey, correct?
There was a little tension there, yes.
All right, and Harper and Genesis were insulting each other at the party the night before the wedding, correct?
They were going back and forth, and there was definitely high tensions. I mean, I always tell my families, the night before the wedding is the hardest. You're gonna wanna get at each other's necks, but just stay calm because the happiest day of your life is just one sleep away.
And you observed Mr. Martini telling Genesis that the bottle of wine was only for her and that no one else was to drink it, correct?
Yeah, it was a really sweet moment. And it's times like that as a wedding planner, all the work pays off. The yelling, the screaming, the fighting. I mean, Harper giving that gift to Genesis was really genuine and kind of made me tear up a bit.
Was it out of character at all that Mr. Martini would give such a gift to Genesis?
Objection, Your Honor, under Rule 404.
In what way?
Opposing counsel with their question is trying to establish a character trend based on the witness's past action in order to demonstrate action or conformity therewith with the action.
Do you want to respond?
Yes, Your Honor. This is admissible because Blair Osborne is testifying to the fact that Harper Martini, it was a sweet moment. However, it's possible that that is incorrect based upon what is in the record.
Okay. Do you have a response to that?
Yes, Your Honor. Opposing counsel is using a propensity argument with character. They're trying to show that Harper Martini's past actions led or did not lead to a specific action in today's case. And that's inadmissible under Rule 404.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think, as I heard it, your actual question was it out of character for this person to do that? That seems to be getting into their character. Is there another purpose you're using this for? Is there any exception that would allow this to come in?
No, Your Honor. We'll concede and move on to the next question.
Okay, in that case, I'll sustain the objection.
All right, Ms. Osborne, Mr. Martini told Genesis that she was to open the bottle of wine only when she was by herself and no one else would be able to see, correct?
Yeah, and I was definitely on board with that. I usually tell my clients that gift giving between immediate family members is good to happen on the side, keep it special, keep it personal, and spend the rest of the wedding reception with the guests.
All right, and one final question. When you left for the night, if you had been worried about Miss Petrillo, that the next day would be difficult because of her drinking, wouldn't you have done something to ensure her safety?
Well, I mean, it's not my place to really coach people in how much they can or can't drink the night before their wedding. If I thought something was extremely off base, I would have made sure she was okay. But as far as I saw, she was just having a really rowdy night before the night of her wedding. And I didn't want to step in with that. Obviously, if I knew how things turned out, perhaps I would have. But in that moment, weddings get crazy and people drink. And that's what was going on.
Did you specifically observe her drinking anything other than the car wine?
She was at the bar for a while with her friends.
But Ms. Osborne, she wasn't drinking anything other than the car wine, correct?
I'm not sure. She could have been. I assume she was, since she was at the bar and she was getting progressively drunker.
Right. No further questions, Your Honor.
Right.
Your Honor, I have...
Go ahead.
I have no redirect. I just asked that this witness be allowed to step down.
Okay, perfect. Ms. Osborne, you can step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Give me just a second, and you can call your next witness.
Your Honor, can we have one moment? Because I think the other computer that the door might have locked to that room. So we just need to unlock it very quickly.
Okay, we'll take a moment. Go ahead and call your witness whenever you're ready.
Your Honor, we call Dr. Reed Cannon to the stand. May we proceed?
You may.
Could you introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Hello, my name is Dr. Reed Cannon.
And what do you do for a living?
I'm a medical consultant that specializes in toxicology and pharmacology.
Doctor, you just mentioned the word toxicology. What exactly is that?
Well, toxicology is the study of chemical substances and their effects on the human body, specifically negative. When I used to teach first-year med students, I would always say, our job is to give scientific credence to the mantra, better out than in.
Well, Doctor, I appreciate that. Do you have any previous experience in toxicology?
Yes, I was the chief toxicologist at Massachusetts General, as well as taught several courses on the intersectionality between law and toxicology at Midlands Medical Center before I joined my consulting firm.
What's your educational background?
Well, I received my undergraduate's degree from The Ohio State University and my medical degree from Harvard.
Now, Doctor, why are you in court today?
Well, my consulting firm was hired to review the cases and specifically the report on Genesis Petrillo's death provided by Dr. Quan.
What exactly were you looking for when you were investigating this case?
Well, in any case like this, the cause of death is the million-dollar question. And so my job was to try and look through, determine this, and compare this with Dr. Quan's report and see if we agreed, essentially.
All right, so you mentioned your consulting firm was hired to look into this. What method did you use to form your investigation and your opinions today?
Well, my method looks remarkably similar to that of another medical professional. It revolves around receiving facts and data and then drawing conclusions in order to diagnose patients. The only main difference is that as a consultant, then I go and review with the primary physician on what they have discovered as well.
Now, that method that you just described, is it reliable?
Absolutely. All of my coworkers would have done exactly the same.
And did you reliably apply it to this case?
Yes.
And did you have sufficient facts and data in this case?
Yes, I did.
Now, doctor, you mentioned that the million-dollar question was what caused the death. Were you able to figure that out?
Absolutely. The cause of death was clear. It was respiratory arrest or lung failure. The contention came at what caused this respiratory arrest.
Were you able to determine what caused the respiratory arrest?
Well, when I got on the case, many people had jumped to the conclusion that Genesis Petrillo had died from pesticide poisoning. However, I don't think this is supported by scientific evidence. In fact, there are several other glaring possibilities that could have caused Genesis Petrillo's death, chief among them, alcohol poisoning.
Why do you say alcohol poisoning could have been a cause of the death?
Well, I've worked with many cases of alcohol poisoning in my time in the field, and I know that it can cause the respiratory arrest that we saw in Genesis Petrillo. Additionally, there's the matter of the symptoms that Genesis Petrillo exhibited upon admittance to the hospital. I've even brought
Doctor, what were those symptoms?
Well, I've brought a board to help demonstrate. If we could screen share it.
Your Honor, can we screen share the visual aid?
Are there any objections to that?
No, Your Honor, the prosecution does not have any objections.
Okay, go right ahead.
Now, doctor, what were the symptoms of alcohol poisoning that you believe Genesis had?
Well, when Genesis was admitted to the hospital, the symptoms that were evidenced were nausea, vomiting, slurred speech, stomach pains, and slowed breathing.
Thank you.
This, combined with the BAC that I received from Dr. Quan's report, put alcohol poisoning as a primary concern of mine.
Doctor, what was the BAC that you received from the report?
Well, at the time it was measured in Dr. Quan's report, it was 0.16. And this
Doctor, I want to take a step back. Exactly how does BAC work?
Oh, well, BAC stands for blood alcohol concentration. It's one of the first lessons you learn in toxicology. And essentially what this means is the amount of content of alcohol compared with blood. So a 0.1 BAC means 1 part alcohol to 1,000 parts blood.
Can BAC change over time?
Absolutely. How BAC works is as you begin drinking, it spikes rapidly. I have a board to exhibit this. In
Your
fact,
Honor, can we screen share the board?
Sure, any objections to this?
No, Your Honor, no objections.
All right, go ahead.
Doctor, using your visual aid, can you explain how BAC can change?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, when you first begin drinking, your BAC spikes rapidly. Then it will continue to increase until you're done drinking, before plateauing for, say, 30 minutes or so, depending on the person. Then it will begin to decline along the graph you can see here in my visual aid.
Thank you. You can unshare the screen. Now, doctor, you mentioned earlier that Genesis Petrillo's BAC was measured at 0.16. Was that her peak BAC that night on what you found in your investigation?
Absolutely not. The measurement was taken at 3 a.m. Now, what you have to consider is the fact that Genesis Petrillo was called 911 at roughly 12:42. This gives a 3-hour window for the BAC to decline. And so Genesis Petrillo's BAC on that night was certainly higher than 0.16.
Doctor, what is a BAC high enough to cause alcohol poisoning?
In my field, anything higher than a 0.3 is cause for immense concern and extreme danger.
Well, doctor, you said her BAC was 0.16, but over 0.3 is cause for concern.
Yes.
Do you think, in your opinion, her BAC could have been above that range?
Absolutely. Now, it depends as different people spike to different things, and it depends also additionally how much alcohol they've consumed. But knowing that Genesis Petrillo's BAC was 0.16, 3 hours, at least 3 hours after she had stopped drinking, was cause enough for me to know that alcohol poisoning could not be ruled out in this case.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Thank you. Is there any cross of Dr. Cannon?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to proceed?
Sure.
Thank you. Good morning, Dr. Cannon. I just have a few questions for you, okay?
Good morning.
Good morning. You have a particularly large client that you could lose if you testify that pesticides killed Miss Genesis Petrillo. Is that correct?
I would not lose this client. It's my consulting firm. What's important to realize is that as a consultant, I'm separate from my firm and have sworn the Hippocratic Oath. What this means is that I put facts and data in front of corporate wants. I'm here to determine the facts, give the case, and essentially bring justice.
So to answer my question, though, you don't want to lose this client for your consulting firm, correct?
Of course not.
And you charge a fee of $50,000 to have examined the body of Miss Petrillo, correct? Or examined the facts of the case in Miss Petrillo's death, correct?
That is correct. It's a $50,000 flat fee, and additionally, appearing in court comes at no additional cost.
And you were unable to personally examine the body of Miss Genesis Petrillo, correct?
I was unable to, but it was completely unnecessary. I was able to examine the blood toxicology reports, the unknown substances reports, the report provided by Dr. Quan, and it was far enough of data to make scientific conclusions.
When drawing your conclusions, you found that they were highly unlikely causes of death, correct?
I'm not certain what you mean by that.
I'll go into it. You had never seen a blood alcohol concentration of 0.16 to that Miss Genesis Petrillo did come back as a reading for ever kill someone, correct?
I'm not certain you're understanding me. I agree that 0.16 is not enough to cause death. But what I don't agree with is that night, Genesis Petrillo's blood alcohol concentration was at a max of 0.16. What's important to consider is after 3 hours of your liver kicking it into high gear and breaking that alcohol down to acetane, carbon dioxide, and water, you're left with a much lower blood alcohol concentration than it truly is.
So to answer my question, you haven't had experience with anyone with a reading of a blood alcohol concentration of 0.16 to be the cause of death, correct?
No, a 0.16 peak BAC is not enough to cause death.
And you concluded that it was highly unlikely that she could have died of alcohol poisoning, correct?
I disagree with highly unlikely. Now, what you have to understand is in a case like this, there are a number of possible circumstances. Each of these circumstances has a different likelihood of happening. Now, one option is that Genesis ingested pesticide-laced wine, but this was sort of less likely than many thought to believe. Now, when you compare this with the other options in the case, including alcohol poisoning, it's less that anything is specifically highly unlikely and more that you can't be certain of anything.
So it is your honest contention today that you do not find that it is highly unlikely that Miss Petrillo died of alcohol poisoning. Is that correct?
Well, it is highly unlikely that she died of alcohol poisoning. Just as the same as it's highly unlikely that she died of pesticide poisoning, or highly unlikely that she ingested pesticides and that eventually led to her death. It's all of these combined which throw doubt on the entire case.
Thank you, Dr. Cannon. Moving on to my next question. You investigated an allergic reaction as a possible cause of death, correct?
That is correct.
And you also concluded that it was highly unlikely that that could have been her cause of death, correct?
It is.
And you concluded that it was highly unlikely that Miss Petrillo could have died of hepatic disease because she lacked that crucial symptom of jaundice, correct?
That is correct. It's another one of those other possibilities which serve to essentially lower the whole case.
And you concluded that that was the least likely, I apologize, I'll move on. I already asked that question. You discovered the inside of the bottle of wine tested positive for organophosphate poisoning, correct?
That is correct.
And when you examined the food at the buffet that was also tested, you concluded that that food tested negative for organophosphate poisoning, correct?
That is also correct.
And in the analysis of Miss Petrillo's stomach showed that the only contents of her stomach was the wine from that bottle that tested positive, correct?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect?
Brief redirect, Your Honor. Now, doctor, just to clarify, we've heard a lot of discussion on cross-examination about likelihood, about whether or not something is more likely. Now, just to be clear for the members of the jury, is any of these conclusions more likely than not from your scientific investigation of this case?
Absolutely not. When you take all of these factors and combine them, you reach the conclusion that there is no possible circumstance in which one of these options is more likely than not to have caused the death of Mrs. Genesis Petrillo.
I have nothing further, Your Honor. And with that, the defense rests our case in chief.
Well, first, let's see if they have a recross of Dr. Cannon.
I do briefly have a couple of quick questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, then.
Dr. Cannon, just for clarification, it is also highly unlikely that Miss Genesis Petrillo died of alcohol poisoning, correct?
Yes, it's one of these options.
And you cannot reasonably conclude with scientific certainty that Miss Genesis Petrillo's blood alcohol content was as high as 0.3%, correct?
What you have to understand is that my job is, in this case, wasn't to give the specific number of Genesis Petrillo's blood alcohol concentration. I was showing that a peak could likely have resulted in a higher than 0.3 BAC, which would have possibly resulted in respiratory arrest and death.
To answer my question, Dr. Cannon, you cannot reasonably conclude that her blood alcohol concentration did reach 0.3, correct?
Your Honor, I'd object to outside the scope because my one redirect question was only about the more likely than not possibilities. It wasn't about her BAC.
Give a response.
No, Your Honor, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
All right, in that case, that's the end of the cross? Okay, it sounds like that was the end of the cross.
Yes, Your Honor, that was the end.
Okay. Is there any more direct from the witness?
No, Your Honor, and at this time, the defense rests our case.
Okay. Do we have time do you want a 5-minute break?
How much time do we have before all loss?
I think we have about 30 minutes. How much time do you have left for closings?
They're each about between 7 and 9 minutes, so I think we have time.
Okay, let's take a 5-minute break and be back at 12:32. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Yes,
thank you.
Your Honor.
Is the defense back yet?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense is ready to proceed.
Sorry, I meant the plaintiff.
Yes, Your Honor. Plaintiff is ready to proceed as well.
Okay, I just didn't see you on screen, so I wasn't sure. Plaintiff, you can give us your closing argument whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury, and may it please the court. Two sides of this story were presented today. One of a hateful and intolerant offense and one of an accidental possible alcohol poisoning event. Dr. Cannon testified that it is highly unlikely that alcohol poisoning was the cause of Ms. Petrio's death. The truth of the matter here is that Harper Martini intentionally poisoned the wine he gave to Genesis Petrio, and that Ms. Petrio drank the wine and died, just as Martini had intended. Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Lauren Sager, and I, along with my co-counsels, Julia Robertson and Colin Kim, represent the
Ms. Baker, I hate to butt in, but I think you're on mute. I couldn't hear you for a second.
Oh, doesn't look like I'm on mute. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. The prosecution bears the burden of proving the elements of this claim, and you have witnessed just that. Martini was motivated by a disapproval to his daughter's same-sex marriage to Ms. Petrio. Pursuant to the case of Jacob v. Alexander, the touching that is necessary for a battery to occur does not require that the defendant's physical person make contact with the plaintiff's physical person. Therefore, Harper Martini's act to introduce an injurious substance into Genesis Petrio's wine does indeed constitute an offensive touch under the precedential definition of a battery. Martini intentionally mixed pesticides into the Cara wine. Martini acted with intent to cause harmful or offensive contact to Genesis Petrio. You heard from Angel Rodriguez, the first prosecution witness, that Harper specifically targeted Genesis. His attitude as well as his actions toward her were demonstrative of this intolerance and disdain. Next, you heard from Dr. Quan, the prosecution's expert witness, a toxicology specialist, that Ms. Petrio's symptoms followed the exact progression of an organophosphate poisoning case. She had ruled out alcohol poisoning very early on and had concluded, based upon her expert training and opinion, that this was most likely a case of organophosphate poisoning. Finally, you heard from Lonnie Paris, who testified further to the rocky relationship that she had witnessed between Harper Martini and Genesis Petrio. Next, you heard from the defense. You heard from Casey Soto, who gave an emotional testimony, and rightfully so. Her fiance had just died, yet she established nothing that would undermine the plaintiff's case. Harper could have hidden his feelings about Genesis Petrio in front of Casey, and Casey cannot know for certain what her father's disapproval of Genesis was based upon. Next, you heard from Blair Osborne, who testified that she did not specifically observe Genesis drinking anything other than the wine. Yet she seemed to assert that Genesis was drunk and she was worried about her at the end of the night. Your Honors, if she was sufficiently concerned about Genesis Petrio's well-being, she would have done something to ensure that the bride would be ready for the next day, because she would have wanted to preserve her professional reputation. Yet she did nothing to look after Ms. Petrio and just figured she would be a little bit hungover, but that all would be well the next day. Finally, you heard from their expert witness, Dr. Cannon, who testified once again that it is highly unlikely for alcohol poisoning to have been the cause of Ms. Petrio's death. Because her blood alcohol concentration was only at 0.16% close to the time of her death, alcohol was likely not the cause of her death through respiratory failure. Pursuant to Exhibit 23, blood alcohol content would have had to at least been 0.35% in order for, at the time of her death, in order for alcohol to have been the likely cause of her death. Yet it wasn't. It was at 0.16% or even lower. And if it was at 0.35% at the time of her death, then it would have led to respiratory failure and to death. However, it was more likely that organophosphate poisoning was the cause of her death, which in all cases, no matter how much the person has ingested, would lead to respiratory failure and to death. Finally, Your Honors, we ask that the jury would find that Harper Martini intentionally acted to batter Ms. Petrillo. And as a direct and proximate result of the foregoing, the plaintiff has suffered harm. We ask the jury to find Harper Martini liable for the death of Genesis as a result of battery by the defendant. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a closing argument from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead whenever you're ready.
The plaintiff picked the wrong poison. Whenever tragedy strikes, we always naturally look for an explanation. You see, the night of the wedding between Genesis Petrillo and Casey Soto was supposed to be the greatest moment of their lives. They were surrounded by their friends, their family. There was drinking and there was dancing. But by the end of the night, Genesis Petrillo was in the hospital, where she would later die. And in order to look at this case fairly, we have to take a step back and look at the facts. Find a reasonable explanation of what caused this horrible tragedy. Now, we can first look at what the plaintiff asserts. The plaintiff has this idea that Harper Martini was this homophobic father who disapproved of his daughter's sexuality, and on that basis went out and poisoned a bottle of wine with pesticide. And then Genesis Petrillo died. It is a crazy and completely unfounded claim. And let's break it down step by step. First, let's look at the motive, because there was absolutely no credible motive for Harper Martini to kill the soon-to-be wife of his only daughter. It makes no sense. In order to try to make sense of it, the plaintiff said that Harper Martini was homophobic. But you heard from Casey Soto that her father was one of the most accepting, tolerant, and supportive people that she could ever ask for. You heard from Blair Osborne that Peony Estates hosted multiple gay weddings there and was very supportive. You also didn't hear from a single witness, not Angel Rodriguez, not Lonnie Paris, not Blair Osborne, not Casey Soto, of a single instance of homophobia on the part of Harper Martini. The accusation that he was homophobic is baseless and offensive. But let's turn now to the science, because the plaintiff has also utterly failed in providing scientific support that Genesis Petrillo died of pesticide poisoning. So let's turn to the testimony of Dr. Quan, the expert that they put in front of you to try to establish this. First, Dr. Quan is incredibly biased. You heard on cross-examination how she is using this case in order to pursue active legislation against pesticides. She hates pesticides, she thinks they are harmful, and she's actively working to get legislation against them. She has every motive based on her personal political beliefs to get even against pharmaceutical and chemical companies. And she is not even a good scientist. What you heard in her testimony is she said that incontinence was not a sign of severe alcohol poisoning. However, when she was pressed on that in cross, it was revealed that incontinence is in fact a symptom of alcohol poisoning. This is a basic fact that any reputable toxicologist should have known. And the fact that she didn't know it shows that she lacks severe knowledge in today's case, or that she was biased against pursuing that knowledge at all. Members of the jury, I'll ask you when you go back into your room, if you saw a lab report, if you saw any specific scientific studies or written materials that establish that there was pesticides in the system. And if there is no lab report, no hospital documentation of Genesis Petrillo's death that link pesticides to her death, ask yourselves why. She was in the hospital. She was treated by Dr. Quan and by doctors. Why was that information not included? And you can also look at the fact that she said that having lower BAC is not a factor in alcohol poisoning. And this is completely false. And to look at that, we can turn to Dr. Cannon, who's a Harvard-educated toxicologist, one of the foremost experts in his field. And he broke down exactly what went wrong in this case. And what went wrong in this case is that the plaintiff simply picked the wrong poison. They focused on pesticide, even though you didn't hear any evidence of any pesticides being introduced by Harper Martini or even being reputably near the proximity of food or wine. And there is no evidence of contamination of pesticides. But what Dr. Cannon did point to, and what is crucial to understand in this case, is that alcohol is a poison. As much as alcohol is popular, it can be deadly. Alcohol consumed in heavy quantities can cause death. And you heard from Dr. Cannon that if someone reaches a 0.35 blood alcohol content, that death could occur. Now, the plaintiff said that in the hospital, Genesis Petrillo had a blood alcohol content of 0.16. But as Dr. Cannon explained to you, this is a blatant misunderstanding of how blood alcohol content works. You see, it slopes. Blood alcohol content falls over time, which means that in the hospital, several hours after consuming alcohol, her blood alcohol content would have fallen noticeably. And also what it's telling is that blood alcohol content of 0.16 is over double the legal limit to drive. She was already at that point severely intoxicated, and she was much more intoxicated before. The plaintiff has also not established how much alcohol she drank. That is the key question in today's trial. And that's ultimately why the defense here today cannot prove to you how Genesis Petrillo died. It's a tragedy that we will not be able to fully answer. But we don't have to answer it. The burden of proof was on the plaintiff who was bringing these charges and never left their table. They have to show to you by a preponderance of the evidence, meaning it's more likely or not, that Genesis Petrillo died via alcohol poisoning by the hand of Harper Martini. And that was not proven at all. But what you did see plenty of evidence in today's trial with was about alcohol. You heard from Blair Osborne how she was worried about a severe hangover, how Genesis Petrillo had consumed a bunch of alcohol that night. You heard from Casey Soto that she was steadily drinking the night of the incident. You heard from Lonnie Paris that she was drinking and appeared very disoriented on the dance floor. All the evidence conclusively points to drinking. And you also heard that evidence from Angel Rodriguez, who testified how she was vomiting, how she was almost asleep. And the fact is, Angel Rodriguez never showed, specifically mentioned to you that he lost track of how much he was drinking that night. So if Angel Rodriguez already lost track due to excessive drinking, we can only imagine the situation that Genesis Petrillo was in. So what we're left with is a case of a poison that was the wrong choice. But you, as the members of the jury, can make the right choice. And you can choose to find the defendant not liable. And that is what we ask you to do here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the plaintiff have a rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly. Let me turn my video on. The defendant just brought forth to you, Your Honors, and members of the jury, that alcohol, that Genesis was observed throughout the night steadily drinking, and drinking enough to have put her over the limit, to have sufficiently endangered her life, leading to her death. However, no one can testify to the fact that she was drinking anything other than the Cara wine. Specifically, Angel Rodriguez testified to the fact that he did not observe her take any of the tequila shots that were ordered for the group that was spending time together before the bar. She was just socializing with her friends at the bar that night, and the only thing that could be proven that she had drank that night was the bottle of Cara wine containing the organophosphate poisons, which would have led to her death. And on a second point of rebuttal, Your Honors, the defendant testified that Dr. Cannon's testimony proves that organophosphate poisoning was also highly unlikely to be her cause of death. However, this is baseless. They stated that a blood alcohol concentration works in such a way that it in fact does not work. Blood alcohol concentration, we concede that Genesis Petria's blood alcohol concentration could have been higher prior to her being at the hospital. However, if it is not as high as 0.35% at the moment of her death or close to the moment of her death, then alcohol poisoning could not have been the cause of her death. Your Honors, it is most likely that organophosphate poisoning is the cause of the Genesis Petria's death, and we ask that you find Harper Martini liable for battery. Thank you, Your Honors.
All right, thank you guys. That concludes the trial. I guess we'll constructively send our one jury member back to deliberate now. Good job. I need just a moment to finish filling out my ballot. I don't know about our jury member. One thing I would like you guys to do, our ballots ask for us to rank attorneys and witnesses by name. And I don't remember the names of all of the, or witnesses by name at least. I don't remember the names of all of the witnesses. So if we could just go through it and each witness come on screen and tell us what their character name was. We can start with the plaintiff, I guess.
Yes, Your Honor. Two of our witnesses had to leave because of other obligations. However, I'll start with actually all three of them. Angel Rodriguez, his name is Christian Soto.
Okay, I just need the character names. I
apologize.
just don't remember what the actual name of the characters were. So the first one was Angel Rodriguez.
Yes, Your Honor. Second is Dr. Quan.
Okay.
And third is Lonnie Paris.
Okay, thank you. And what about the defense?
Danielle Maxwell for Casey Soto.
Julia Farron for Blair Osborne.
And Max Burrows for Dr. Cannon.
Okay, thank you.
Did you need the names of the attorneys again, or do you have those?
I don't need the names of the attorneys because the categories they give for the attorneys are just saying plaintiff closer, defense closer, etc. So that's a little bit easier. But give me just a moment to finish filling this out, then we can go through some comments. Okay, I'm done filling mine out. Is my co-judge done as well?
Yes, Your Honor. I've submitted my ballot.
Awesome. I guess we'll give some brief comments. I know you guys probably want to get some lunch before your next round. I'll let my co-judge go first if you want to.
Sure. So I guess usually judges will introduce themselves. I haven't had a chance to introduce myself yet. My name is Brandon. I'm a management consultant at a firm in Dallas. 4-year AMTA competitor, competed at nationals, was an attorney and a witness all 4 years. So love mock trial. First of all, congratulations to you all. This was an excellent round. I'm sure for most of you, this is probably the first tournament of the year. I did record comments for individuals, so I'll be able to submit those and you'll be able to get those. I know you and your team captains and your coaches obviously have preference over whatever I have to say, but you will be able to read individual comments. Things as a whole. First of all, I know this is a unique situation we're in when it comes to online competition. I suggest looking at some of the one last time tournament videos that AMTA has posted that the seniors did last year or in August, I think. They have great resources for how to use demonstratives and everything. And that was probably one of my biggest points. You really have a unique opportunity to show the members of the jury and the judge your comfortability with using technology. And that's something I really didn't see a lot of this round. You'll see in some of those previous competitions AMTA has hosted online, they make extensive use of demonstratives, and it's very interesting, especially whenever the jury members and the judges, we can't actually see your entire body to get a sense of you're having a fun outfit. We can't always judge your variation in tone and pitch as well as we could if we were in person. So having things that are interesting, like demonstratives, I think is very important in telling an interesting narrative. And it doesn't even have to be things in the case. It can be things you make up, like timelines that can be very effective. Some other things, I was kind of confused as to what the charge was from the very beginning, maybe in pretrial or in openings. Maybe openers do a better job of explaining that this is a battery civil case, explaining what the elements of that are and explaining it in a way that's easy to understand. I also saw there was some variation in using criminal and civil terms, for example, like prosecution and plaintiff within the same paragraph, the same statement. Just make sure it's concise. Whenever it comes to themes, I didn't really see a lot of use of themes and theory throughout the case. On the defense side, I did get a theme statement, but seeing it used more throughout your crosses, throughout your directs would be great. And then just lastly, once again, you can read my individual comments later, but just to make things seem more conversational, because now that we're not even in person, it is really hard for things to seem conversational. I would do things like, one, make sure you're not scripted. I know there is the temptation. I'm not sure if anyone was scripted, but just make things more conversational. One easy way to do that is to have pauses between attorney questions and witness answers. I know from both sides, there were attorneys cutting their own witnesses off because they were anxious to get on to the next question. Simply asking shorter questions and waiting longer in between question and answer responses will make things seem more real. But those are the broad comments I have. You will get to see my individual comments.
Yeah, I would completely agree with just about everything he said. I'll try not to keep you too long. I know you want to get some lunch, but I'll give you a few brief comments. First of all, I did give individual comments as well. The form only let me write one line. So instead I kind of typed some comments up on a document. If each team wants to drop an email in the chat, I could send those documents to you guys and get my more extensive written comments. I tried to take pretty detailed notes, so hopefully there's some things in there to work on. I guess I'll introduce myself first as well. My name is Liam. I am not a real attorney or a real judge. I'm a former competitor. I competed for 8 years, 4 years in high school, and then 4 years for Furman in college. Competed at nationals a couple of times as well. I now also am the head coach of a high school mock trial team in Atlanta International School. This is the second time I've seen this case, so I probably can't offer a whole lot of specific feedback about how you approach the case or what you could have done that you didn't do. But I have seen a few of these online competitions so far. I judged at TBC over the summer and coached at the Gladiator, and I've seen a couple more scrimmages. So hopefully I'll be able to offer some better feedback on sort of the stylistic side of things, especially when it comes to online mock. Just a few general comments I'll go through. The first is themes. On the plaintiff, I wasn't really able to tell any theme that you had. I think you need to come up with one, or if there was one there that I missed, you need to make it a lot more clear. That should probably be, if not the first line, at least within the first few lines of both of your statements. Probably repeat it 4 or 5 times throughout your statements. Really hammer it into my head that, okay, this is my theme. It's especially important in mock trial because a lot of mock trial judges, particularly those with a lot of experience competing or coaching, will be looking for a theme. And if you don't have one, you might get scored down. On the defense, I picked up on your theme. The plaintiff picked the wrong poison. I like that theme. I think it's effective. I think it's catchy. What I think you could do, though, is integrate it more throughout your case. I think there were a lot of opportunities you had on directs and crosses where you could have thrown that theme in. You know, maybe on some crosses, headline with your theme. I think things like that could work to make it a little more clear throughout your case. The next thing I'll touch on is objections. I tried to let you guys argue objections as much as possible to give you guys some practice doing that. I hope that was helpful. There were some objections that I thought were a little bit misplaced throughout trial that either didn't really need to be made or didn't completely apply. And then others that I thought were a little bit more appropriate. One thing I would note is don't concede objections. There were a couple times when I thought you might have had a good argument to make, but instead of making that argument, you said, oh, that's all right, Your Honor, we'll just move on. Or that's all right, well, we could just withdraw this question. I wouldn't do that. I think that makes you look unprepared. So instead, I would think through all the possible objections you could get to testimony and really think about how you would respond to each of those. And even if you think you're dead wrong about an objection, still argue it to the judge and argue it as confidently as you can. Because half of what's important in objections in my mind is just being confident. Even if you're making the wrong argument, if you sound like you're right, the judge might agree with you. So don't concede the objections, argue them as much as you can. I think that the next thing I'll mention is something that my co-judge touched on as well, which is exhibits, demos. I agree that I think one of the unique things about online mock trial is it's a lot more difficult for the judge to pay attention for 2.5 hours to everything you say. It's a lot easier as a judge to listen to everything in person. So I think you want to do things to really capture the judge's attention as much as possible. One of those things I think you can do is using more exhibits throughout your case. I think there was only one exhibit that was actually admitted into evidence. I would try to use as many exhibits as you can, screen share those throughout trial. There were a couple demos that you used. I think if you could pull in more demos, that would be great. One place I'd especially like to see that is on closing arguments. If both of you can go in and screen share, you know, this probably applies more to the plaintiff than the defense, but still to the defense too. Screen share 3 or 4 exhibits throughout your closing as you're talking about them. You know, on the defense, you talked a little bit about the blood alcohol concentration. That would be a great opportunity to pull up that chart you used for your experts, use that as a visual. So I think using more of those exhibits and demos would really help. On the plaintiff, I think you really needed a demo for your expert as well. I think that would have helped give her testimony a bit more visual flair. The next thing I'll mention is that one of the things that you guys might not realize as competitors who are super familiar with the case and have been working on this for, I don't know, maybe a month or more, is that judges often come into a trial either not having heard the case, or maybe they've heard it once or twice before. Sure, you'll probably get a few judges who are coaches of other teams and know the case backwards and forwards, but the vast majority of your judges don't know the case the way you guys know it. And so it becomes that much more important to really help your judges out to understand the details of the case. And so one way that I think you can do that, make it as clear as possible, is making sure you tell a compelling, concise, and really clear story from the very beginning, right? The first thing I want to hear from the plaintiff opening is telling me exactly what happened in 30, 45, maybe 60 seconds, so that I know off the bat, simple version of what happened, and then carry that story throughout your case. I think doing things like whenever you mention names or mention dates, explaining who those people are, or reminding the judges why that date is relevant would be really helpful as well, because it's, as a judge, it's often hard to keep all this whole cast of characters and all these dates to keep up with them. Another aspect of that is simplifying the way you present information and the questions you ask, the things you say in opening and closing. Sometimes I think mock trial is a great exercise in simplifying things as much as possible. And so simplifying the story that you tell in your statements, simplifying the way you explain the law and the charges in your statements as well, simplifying in your directs, giving the judges a sense of, okay, this is where I'm going to go with this direct, or this is where I'm going to go with this cross. Things like that are really, really helpful. And on that note, try to cut any sort of technical phrasing or legalese out of questions. A sort of rule of thumb I like to fall back on is what I call the Waffle House wording rule, which is don't use a word in court that you wouldn't hear in a Waffle House. It sounds kind of silly, but essentially it's remember that your judges, or in real trial, your jurors are going to be ordinary people. They're not going to be people who know the law backwards and forwards. They're not going to be people who speak in legalese. And so use ordinary sorts of words that they would use and speak like a normal human being, speak conversationally. I think it will make it a lot more clear for your judges. The final thing I'll touch on just briefly is the uniqueness of the trial being over Zoom. I don't know how much leeway you have around setup. I don't know if AMTA's released any guidance or the tournament provide any guidance on this, but I play around a little bit with exactly how you want to do that. Just a couple notes that I noticed right off the bat. First of all, for the plaintiff, unless there's a rule against this, I would have the crossing attorney stay on screen during the direct and the directing attorney stay on screen during the cross. Keep yourselves muted unless you're making an objection, but I think it's appropriate to stay on screen for that portion of the trial. Also for the plaintiff, you were very close to your camera. You have this great room set up behind you, and I would back up a little bit, because for your attorneys, if you're just seeing the head and shoulders view, then you can't really make use of things like movement or gestures as effectively. And if you back up a little bit, you could make a little bit more use of that. I will probably position it so that you're seeing about from the waist up. I would also try to position it a little bit more at eye level. For witnesses, make sure that your camera is set up so that it's not cutting your head off. I think there was at least one, maybe two people who had their heads cut off a little bit. For the defense, one thing I noticed was that you have your laptop set up in one place and your camera is in a different place. I think that's probably fine, but oftentimes you were looking at the laptop sometimes when you were presenting instead of looking at the camera. I know it's natural to do that because the people are on the laptop, but if you want to have this set up, I think I would practice looking at the camera instead. So really just play around with how you think that, what you think the most effective setup is over Zoom, and how you think that could be as clear as possible. All right, that's all I have. Let me take a picture of these emails real quick. You guys are Richmond and Liberty.
Thank you very much, Your Honor, for being willing to email those to us.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
All right, unless there's anything else, I think the trial's over. Good job, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.